Enjoy.
Chicago.
My kind of town.
And the world.
I guess it's just because you're different somehow.
It's Radio DePaul.
You hear me?
Chicago's College Connection. Keeping it real.
Keeping it real.
Real good. Radio DePaul. Chicago's College Connection.
Welcome back to the lineup here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. Eli Hershkovich alongside Tom Bostwick, and NFL playoffs are at the top of our list here. And again, as I mentioned prior to the break, we have Russell S. Baxter joining us now. Again, a feature columnist of Bleacher Report and Yahoo Sports, as well as some other sites. Russell, are you with us?
I certainly am. How are you today?
We're terrific, and again, as we mentioned, you write a lot of blog sites as well, and the big ones being Yahoo Sports and Bleacher Report. But if you want to tell the listeners who haven't heard you before, what exact sites do you write for?
Well, I also write for Pro Player Insiders. I write for Cold Hard Football Facts. I'm a member of the Yahoo Contributor Network. I do a lot of stuff on Twitter, Bax Football Guru. I have my own Facebook page for Pro Football Guru, and of course there's the website profootballguru.com, where if you want one-stop shopping for everything I write, everything winds up there.
All right, terrific, and our listeners will have to check that out, of course, after you speak, as they want to hear the live Russell S. Baxter talk. But first off, we were taking a look at your article on Bleacher Report during the break, titling, of course, NFL Conference Championships 2013, every team's biggest key to victory. My favorite, and Tom's favorite as well, was the Niners note about the blackout. But we'll get into that when we talk some Niners in just a little bit. But starting off with the Patriots here, as you were talking about, the Patriots have to run the football with LeGarrette Blount. But as you mentioned, it's not like they just started to run the football. You know, people have been talking about the Patriots. This is a brand new thing. It's all been Tom Brady. But you know, I drafted Stephen Ridley in my second round as Tom, and I talked about with Tom. And Stephen Ridley was a great player last year, not a great player this year. But LeGarrette Blount had a very solid year this year for the Patriots and showed it against the Indianapolis Colts.
And you throw Shane Vereen there as well. I mean, this was a team that was 9th in the league in rushing this year. They were 7th in the league in the rushing last season. And I think we get far too caught up in it's Tom Brady and it's Peyton Manning and it's Colin Kaepernick and it's Russell Wilson. I mean, I get it's a quarterback-driven league, but there are some backseat drivers hanging around. And the running game is very important to both Denver and New England, because both Denver and New England, even though there's a D in New England and there's a D in Denver, there's no D with the Broncos and the Patriots.
No, absolutely. And, obviously with no Sean Moreno, with the Broncos having a nice resurgent year there, the run game there. And you mentioned Shane Vereen. You know, a couple games there, he would have 10, 11, 12 catches, for over 100 yards. And those are as good as runs a lot of times, those little dump offs or little screen passes to Shane Vereen. So I think that this Patriots offense is very multifaceted, and it's not just Tom Brady slinging it all over the field.
Yeah, and Shane Vereen kind of filled in the Danny Woodhead role this year as the best he could. Tom Brady in the passing era of Tom Brady, and we somehow forget that Tom Brady's career has almost been twofold, because when the Patriots were winning Super Bowls in the early 2000s, they were not a passing team. They were a balanced team. They were a very hard-hitting, physical defensive team. They were a running team. I think people don't realize the 3 years that Tom Brady and the Patriots won the Super Bowl, none of those years did Tom Brady throw 30 touchdown passes, much less 40 or 50.
Yeah, and again, you talk about Brady, and Tom and I were getting into a debate in our last segment, again, talking about Brady and Manning for the MVP. I personally think Brady should win it, even though he won't, just because, again, I don't think the MVP award, even though it predominantly is about stats. You know, Brady had a terrific season this year with a very underlying receiving core: Aaron Dobson, Kembrell Tompkins having the big catch against the New Orleans Saints. And again, Rob Gronkowski going down at the beginning of the season, not having him there, and then going down at the end of the season too. He had a little to work with. Having Shane Vereen obviously helped to end it, but Danny Amendola, Julian Edelman also having their injuries too.
See, but I opt toward Manning, because if Manning doesn't put the points on the board that he does, their defense is. Let's not forget, Denver gave up 399 points this year. That's a whopping total. The Giants won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, giving up 400. But that Giant team also gave up more points than it scored. I think you just made a great case, but a better case for Bill Belichick being coach of the year than you made Tom Brady being the MVP of the league.
That's a really good point there. Obviously Belichick has made whatever he has on the field work. Doesn't matter if he finds them off the street or it's a big splashy signing. But switching over here to Denver, you mentioned the lack of defensive firepower and obviously that defense. A couple shootouts. Peyton Manning had to obviously put up over 50 points a couple times to win games. But what is what has no Sean Moreno done for that offense? Obviously Monty Ball has been a little underwhelming in his rookie year, and Peyton's never had the best of running backs behind him, but it really felt like no Sean Moreno took a lot of pressure off Peyton Manning in some games.
I think the biggest thing that no Sean Moreno did this year was stay on the field. I mean, he has not been a guy who is, had a lot of success staying healthy. Remember last year he got dinged in the playoff game against Baltimore. That was the biggest thing. Remember, he had a monster night against the New England Patriots when these teams played up in Foxborough in Week 12, the game in which Denver blew the 24-0 lead. I believe Moreno was at least 220 on the ground. The Broncos ran for 280 and somehow found a way to lose that game because they only had 280 yards rushing. They had 48 carries. But obviously turnovers turned out to be a big part of that game as well. And that's where these teams have to try and rely. Neither one of them do a great job of stopping each other. I know Denver's defense is tied for 7th best in the league versus the run, but they're 27th against the pass. So that number, honestly, is a little deceptive. And we know New England has had trouble stopping the run all year, even in games that they've won. That's just a problem for them. Now, when you lose Vince Wilfork and Gerard Mayo and now Brandon Spikes, that's what exactly was going to happen. And it's a shame because I thought this Patriots defense really had the potential to be one of its best in recent years. I thought the addition of Tommy Kelly, who's also hurt, was a big pickup for them as well. So it's interesting where both of these clubs find themselves, but once again, they find themselves in this position. I mean, New England's in the AFC title game for the third year in a row. I mean, they're almost an automatic. And, it's funny. I was one of those people, when they won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, everybody was quick to say the word dynasty. I was not, because in 2002, they missed the playoffs. So, I mean, that's like a really good donut. Okay, 3 championships in 4 years, but a big hole in the middle. But now when you consider since 2001 that they've had 13 straight winning seasons, tied for the 6th longest streak in the history of the NFL, they've won 10 or more games 10 years in a row. Now they're a dynasty, even though they haven't won the Super Bowl since 2004. To me, dynasties aren't 4 years. Okay, even the TV show Dynasty lasted more than 4 years.
Yeah, I was about to say, even though they haven't won a Super Bowl these past 3 years, and they made it to the AFC Championship game, that doesn't make them not a dynasty. Again, I know I just said 2 nots in a row, but again, this Patriots team under Tom Brady has been absolutely terrific, and I think it just shows you that compared to his MVP season, again, and comparing that year to Peyton Manning, again, I'm just trying to make this argument again. Peyton Manning had the weapons this season, and you made a great point about Peyton Manning, and Tom did as well last time we talked about it with the MVP award, that Peyton Manning, you look at other quarterbacks and they have to be accurate. But Peyton, and even though they have the weapons, and some of those quarterbacks are not accurate, but Peyton Manning has one of the most deadliest arms in the NFL. Looking at Tom Brady's MVP year, he had some great weapons, but Randy Moss was in a declining year coming away from Oakland, and he made Randy Moss into the star again that he was, and he made Jabbar Gaffney into another solid wide receiver. Benjamin Watson, guys like those. But going back to the Broncos-Patriots matchup, the game that you were talking about again from this past season, how the Broncos let the Patriots back into the football game, I think, even though the wind was howling in New England, was they didn't throw the football. They decided to pound it, even though the Patriots' run defense is so weak. So, and again, you brought it up on Bleacher Report, the Broncos need to play keep away, but don't you think that the Broncos should play keep away by throwing the football?
No, well, they'll do some of that, and they'll be able to take advantage of some of the youth that New England has at linebacker. But remember, they also turned out, let's not forget what turned out to be the biggest play of that game was a punt that was blown by the wind and hit one of the Broncos players, and the Patriots had covered, and they kicked the field goal, and they left. So New England never really stopped them in that game. Remember, New England took the lead in that game, and Denver came back and tied it and forced overtime. So I don't want to dismiss the fact that it's the turnovers in that game. There were quite a few of them, and that enabled New England to get back in it as well. So when I say keep away, it's not just running the ball. It's playing mistake-proof football, which very, very funny. Denver was the only one of the 4 teams last weekend, of the winning teams, I should say, to commit a turnover.
That's a very interesting point. Because you think of Peyton Manning, and usually he's pretty good with the ball, but obviously, was there a fumble and interception last week?
Well, Julius Thomas had the fumble,
right,
and Peyton Manning had the interception in the end zone. Although it is an interception, I don't get into that whole thing. Will it bounce off? But I would rather give Donald Butler, the linebacker of the Chargers, amazing credit because he made such a heads-up play off that carry.
Absolutely, and then on that Thomas fumble, the Chargers defenders straight ripped it out. That was a very impressive play.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But you think about it, Seattle, San Francisco, New England, they all played turnover-free football last weekend.
Absolutely, and mentioning Seattle, San Francisco transfer here to the NFC. Looking at your key for the San Francisco 49ers, you just say blackout because you mentioned that the past 2 games they've gone up to CenturyLink Field. They have laid goose eggs. That defense and that crowd has totally rattled Colin Kaepernick and the San Francisco 49ers offense, and I think a lot of people are discounting that. They're talking about Kaepernick going in this week and exercising his demons. I don't see that. I see another poor game from Kaepernick and the 49ers offense.
Well, that's entirely possible because if you really get down to it, you're absolutely correct. The San Francisco offense, in fact, in the last 6 meetings with Pete Carroll's defense, has not played well at all. And yet somehow the 49ers have won 4 of the 6 meetings. But let me go back to this week's game in Seattle. Kaepernick, even when they beat the Seahawks back in Week 14, 19-17, he didn't have a great game. They ran for 163 yards on Seattle's defense. They got 1 touchdown and 4 field goals, and that is a prevailing theme with Pete Carroll versus Jim Harbaugh. If you remember, these coaches now who obviously, I don't know if they exchange Christmas cards, but they don't seem like they're very fond of each other, going back to USC and Stanford.
Right.
But let's go back to just their pro days, which is 2011 through 2013. 6 games, I already mentioned. The Niners have won 4 of them. Jim Harbaugh's very first game in the NFL as a head coach was against Pete Carroll's Seahawks at Candlestick Park. They beat them 33-17. 2 of those touchdowns were Ted Ginn returns, a punt and a kickoff. So here comes the math. 6 games versus Pete Carroll's defense. 3 with Alex Smith as quarterback, 3 with Colin Kaepernick as quarterback. 6 games, Niners offense, a total of 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, and again, the Seahawks defense can play extremely well at home, that as we've seen it. And we look at the Saints game last weekend. Drew Brees went in there, and that first half, he looked very, very uncomfortable. He started to pick it up a little bit late in the third quarter and into the fourth. Unfortunately, Marcus Colston decided to say, I'm going to throw the ball forward and not give my quarterback a chance to win the football game, or at least tie up the football game. And there she wrote. But again, the Seahawks, as you just mentioned, with Marshawn Lynch, as we flip it to the Seattle Seahawks offensive side of the football, I saw somebody, I'm not sure who, I actually remember on Twitter, Skip Bayless wrote this. I want to see if you disagree or agree with this. Switching back to the Patriots a little bit too. He said, I would rather have LeGarrette Blount than Marshawn Lynch at running back, just because LeGarrette Blount is the hotter back to have right now. But I would obviously rather have Marshawn Lynch. He gives you so much more after the tackle. He breaks tackles to begin with, and we saw the beast mode run that he had last week on breaking out to the outside and scoring what was the game-winning touchdown run against the Saints.
Well, to me, you can make as good a case as Marshawn Lynch being the MVP of the Seattle Seahawks as you can Russell Wilson. I don't know if that holds up with LeGarrette Blount and Tom Brady, but let's go back to last year. 18 games that the Seattle Seahawks played, including the playoffs. Marshawn Lynch ran for 100 yards in 11 of those games. He had another big this year with touchdowns. He is the cog that makes them go. Just like Frank Gore is the cog that makes San Francisco go, both these teams are also very deep at running back. They both know how to run the ball. They both have good offensive lines, but I also think San Francisco has a superior edge in the offensive line because Seattle has had problems with the tackle staying healthy this year.